This episode is sponsored by United Refrigeration and Westermeyer Industries, revolutionizing your HVACR experience. Visit URI.com for all your HVACR needs, offering real-time inventory, personalized pricing, and a nearby stock feature. Access quick pick replacement parts and branch details effortlessly. With 350 plus fully stocked locations across North America, our knowledgeable staff are ready to assist with the solutions you need. Exclusive offer. Use code ARPOD on URI.com to get a $10 gift card when purchasing the Westermeyer oil float, part number W4300-38F. These high-performance floats are not just compatible with their own oil separators, but also available as a crossover model, conveniently stocked at United Refrigeration. That's code ARPOD to claim your $10 gift card. Visit URI.com now.
The Sporlan division of Parker Hannifin Corporation is sponsoring this podcast. Sporlan is the leading manufacturer of HVAC and R components. Using quality materials and craftsmanship, Sporlan maintains a commitment to innovation, manufacturing excellence, service, and support for its customers since 1934. The company is known for its catch-all filter dryers, thermostatic expansion valves, solenoid valves, pressure regulating valves, suction filters, electric valves, controllers, supermarket monitoring solutions, chemicals, smart service tools, ZoomLock Max Press to Connect, and ZoomLock Push to Connect refrigerant fittings. If folks want to learn more, what do they do?
You can go to sporlan.com.
I guess that's Jim and John for Sporlan signing off.
Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Compass. I'm flying solo today, no Brett. So I have some guests in here. I have two guys that have been around for a while and first time on a podcast. I got Sam Major and Steve Moore. How you guys doing?
How we doing, man? Good to be here.
Yep. Nice to be here.
So tonight we're going to talk about something a little different, guys. We're going to talk about IoT and GAMS solutions and monitoring. Steve, you want to tell everybody about yourself?
Absolutely. This year is going to be my 10th year with Electronic Technologies. We're a controls integration firm right out of Baltimore. And we have an alarm monitoring solution called GAMS Plus. It just stands for Graphical Alarm Monitoring System. And we came into it with the premise of, man, no one likes their alarm monitoring provider. All those legacy alarm monitoring stink. And everyone says, I don't understand it. Like the person who's calling, there's no context and there's just not enough information to make sense of it. And we said, hey, we got this digital era. How can we make it fun? How can we make something that's innovative and that's super practical at the technician level? So we're excited to go over what IoT and alarm monitoring for Emerson and Danfoss, what that does look like in a modern era.
Awesome. And then Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Sam Major. I'm with Turner Refrigeration. We're located out of Rutland, Vermont. This will be my 10th year as well at Turner Refrigeration. Grew up in the industry a little bit. My stepfather was doing refrigeration my entire life too, so I've been around it. And my role at Turner's has been, as of late, we doing a lot with the controls, the EMS stuff on the supermarket side, and GAMS has been a big help for us as of late. I met Steve at FMI a couple of years ago, and as we talk about it more in the podcast later on about where GAMS came with us, GAMS has been real great for us in the sense that as we move forward in refrigeration, I'm hiring a lot of guys that are younger, and technology is a big part of those younger kids' lives. And I think a lot of the EMS manufacturers are realizing that as well. But I think one thing that GAMS does is brings them all into one system that simplifies the process, other than trying to teach a guy Danfoss, teach a guy Emerson, teach a guy RDM, teach a guy microtherm, whatever. It brings it all into one. So Steve and Buck, his cohort there at GAMS, has been big for that, helping us out. So yeah, that's that's me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys want to get started? You want to share away, Steve?
Yeah, let's do it. Let me hit the old share button there.
Did not go.
Yeah, there she
There
goes.
it is.
So the idea with GAMS is we're seeing a lot of issues where IT departments didn't want to let people in. Technicians wanted to know what they were walking into when there were problems. And then, but at the same time, the store and like the store operator, they felt left in the dark, staring at an E2 screen with a bunch of text and quite frankly, a lot of stuff that they could probably break in a loud and noisy motor room with a bunch of voodoo going on in the background. So we said, look, if we could strip out like all of the nonsense, if we could just only display exactly what a technician needs to be able to make an informed decision and get to the root cause of issues faster, then that's where we want it to be. So GAMS, we actually started GAMS 25 years ago at this point, where it was like a computer-based system that sat in the manager's office and gave the store a way to look at what's going on. But now, and like with everyone with a cell phone in their pocket and high-speed internet widely available, we put it in the cloud and made something that's super accessible for technicians and for store personnel to be able to like collaborate and see exactly what's going on. So I'm excited to share this with you guys. I hope it's going to be beneficial. We have a lot of contractors. We have a lot of store personnel that kind of use this as like their digital tool belt as to like run their day-to-day. I'm excited to show you each one. We'll walk through what it looks like, how people use it, and then hopefully Sam can share with us how his team's using it as well to add value. One of the best things, I'll pull up a live store here in a second, but one of the best things our operators love is this idea of a layout. Green is good, red is bad, yellow is defrost. You guys probably remember the old control panels where there was something like a layout or it was 65, but picture a world where you could get to that anywhere and we can have like really good conversations with both the operator and the contractor and everyone's on the same page. How many times have you gotten the alarm and the store saying, hey, but is it in defrost or what? This eliminates a lot of that. It updates in real time and it's just super simple. But then on top of that, we want to make it simple for you to be able to see what is, if it's an individual case issue or if it's a circuit issue, and we'll look at that here in a moment. I'll pull up a store now. So this is a demo store just so you can see what real alarms look like. Right here in the middle are all the active alarms. So anything that's in the controller, in the Danfoss, in the Emerson, that is currently an alarm. So if you're not seeing it in your Danfoss controller, it's not going to show up here. I'm only showing you what's already going on at your store. So right now I could point out a couple of fun things. Duration, right? How long has it been an alarm? This one's been an alarm for 5 hours and 25 minutes. In the last 30 days, it's happened 2,000 times. It's my demo site, so you got some fun stuff like that. But really quickly, I'm going to assume that you guys have never been to S-Mart Catonsville, but you don't have to be. If you want to know where those cases were, you come right up here to your layout, and you can see the cases in red being the ones that are in alarm. You can click on them, get more information about what's going on. Clicked it way too fast. You get more information about what's going on, and it tells you exactly what you want to know, right? What the temperature is, when's it going into defrost, what its alarm parameters are. And if you think that case is iced up, you're like, man, you know what? I bet you that case, if I just put in a defrost right now, I bet you by the time I get out there, I can start working on it. Right from here, you can throw it in a manual defrost. It'll ask you why, have you put in a few notes, and it'll record that over there. Who's putting in defrost. Obviously, not everybody has to have access to everything, but you could do that without pulling out Connect Plus or without pulling out UltraSite, connecting to VPNs. We're right in here in the case, throwing in defrost and viewing how it's trending. Now, I can only tell you that you guys know about the marble notebook that kind of collects dust in the motor room, where people put notes. Hey, I changed the filters on this date, or I repaired a leak here. we said if we could do that, if we could reimagine that marble notebook, what would that look like? So the idea here is we're on a single case, this produce case. If we replace the fan motor, we can just put that in, and now there's a log of, okay, who did it, when they did it. So the guy who's on calls, man, I know Steve was at that store. What did he do out there? He can go into his logbook, he can search it, and he can see exactly like what's been going on with that case. Same with the alarm history. Right now, we can see what's not only happening with the individual case, but what's happening with the circuit. So the rest of the cases on that circuit are those faint lines. Let me find a little bit better case that's not intentionally terrible. Let's go here. So obviously, again, that range, I can see it's running a little bit warm, but nothing terrible. And then down here, we can see the temperature graph. If somebody had a health inspector and they wanted to produce a log, click the log button, throw it in Excel, and you have every 2 minutes of temperature history ready to go. Same with going back in time. If you want to compare what it's doing today versus last week, you can really quickly, you can go back years into the past if you really wanted to.
What's the logging on the controller? Like, how much data does it actually keep on in the cloud?
So I think I heard two questions there. First, you could completely have no history enabled on the controller. So even if your E2 is just bogged down and you have no more history left on it, I don't care. So we're storing all of the information ourselves. So that's what's really awesome. But also, we're keeping up to 2 years of temperature history. If you needed more, you could ask me, we give you some more. But I think right out of the bat, we're giving you 2 years of temperature history. Very rarely are people like, hey, I wonder what the temperature of this one case was in 2021. But if you wanted to, you could. But no, so the idea is, how do we take this out of the controller who's doing enough work already, managing the suction groups, managing the rack, doing like defrost and everything that it's doing? How do we take that load off of the controller, but all while also making it super accessible for the technician? So, but at the same rate, if we wanted to be able to look at the rack, we could do that too. And we want to do it in like a graphical way. A lot of our newer technicians, they see a bunch of text and they wouldn't know what to do with it. But we come in here, we have a visual representation about what's happening with the condenser. The same thing, like you're standing in front of a rack, you can see what's happening with each one of the circuits, what state it's in. And then the same with the rack down here. So each one of these is a compressor. Obviously, you can see this one has an unloader. Green means it's on and it's running without an alarm. If you actually had one that was in alarm, it would show up red. And you can also see your pressures down this way as well.
Quick question, Steve. I don't mean to derail you. Do you guys have the ability? So say if we had CTs on those compressors, do you guys have the ability to monitor amp draw on those compressors? Say if we had a dent power monitor.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So the idea would be twofold there. So one, if you had that power monitor on it, we could show that for you. But also, if that E2, that Danfoss is calling for that compressor to run and she's not running, you're going to get that red alarm, and it's actually going to show proof fail and it being an alarm. So you'll know exactly which compressor is an alarm. Down here, we have our pressures clearly. This is all updating in real time. So as soon as you're seeing this on site, you're seeing it reflected here. And in the same way, we could add our notes. And I could show you a couple other stores. So if we're doing like individual rack service, this would be a great place to put that. Again, it's not trying to replace like work order management, or it's not trying to replace your timesheet. It's really just to help the guy behind you. Hey, when were those filters changed again? Or what happened? What did you do at that store last week? Without having to wake a guy up when you're on call, you can come in here, check your notes. You can search it. You can say, search the word fan or contactor. And it would search through all the notes that anyone has ever written about contactor or fan or valve, and it's going to show you the notes that they put in.
Nice. That's pretty handy.
Same thing with HVAC. This store has one pretty big unit. So, and we wanted to create a visual representation. It looks like the system's satisfied. If they wanted to change the HVAC set points and if they had the right credentials to log in, they could change that here. We can see how it's been running. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting at a stoplight, customer calls and says, hey, they're cold, they're warm, they're whatever. And without even pulling out my laptop, I'm hopping on my phone app. I'm saying, oh, look at that. It is a little bit warm. We turn the heat on a little bit more, and we're doing this right from our phone. Again, you have to have the right credentials, but the idea is that you're jumping through a bunch of hoops to do it, and we're be able to bounce between stores without much effort.
Now, Steve, what's your guys' writability on here between the EMS controller and readability?
Yes, if you can connect the controller to an internet, if it's a modern controller, we can probably connect to it. Right now, we're doing mostly Copeland and Danfoss, and then obviously the Bitzer CMRC we're connecting to, and Backrack as well.
Nice, that's interesting. And Denton power monitors also?
If you want a Denton power monitor on here, I'll get one on there for you. So here's what's kind of cool. We're a scrappy bunch. So if it's not on there today, it's something that can definitely be done. If there's a need for it, we're all about it.
A lot of that stuff, you guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
A lot of that stuff, like they haven't already had it in there, and I just come from the contractor and using it. What I've done, Kev, is I've taken, say, the input or whatever else where it lives in the controller, that Denton power meter, and I've just exported the input value into a sensor. If I know I'm using GAMS on this site and I know that they don't have a Denton power meter, I'll actually create like a sensor application in my Emerson controller, and then I'll apply like that input off that Denton power meter into that sensor page. If I'm looking to like to monitor that, that KW or whatnot, because they'll be able to access all your sensors no matter what that point is from inside the sensor control. So if I export just like that input, create, say, in the Copeland app, I just create an analog sensor, and then I export that and make the input the Denton power meter input or whatever else. Then we'll just read it that way until they get like a description file in for that Denton power meter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Seems like it'd be awesome for energy monitoring.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm going to get into that a ton later. We actually did a whole flexible load management program through GAMS, which is nice, recently.
I'm going to show you two more things here, and then Sam, I'm going to turn it back over to you. But we had an application recently with a store in Manhattan. They had a really custom condenser that they wanted to buy from BAC. It was modular. It's called this Nexus controller. And it was all well and good, except for it came with its special little PCO Corel controller. And that's fine. But the issue being that it didn't integrate with their Danfoss system. So they had no way to get alarms from it. They had no way to interrogate it. They didn't know if it was doing what it should be, when they needed it to be. So we were able to use GAMS to bring together their EMS system that's handling the rack, handling their HVAC, but also tie in this component that they absolutely needed for energy savings and also for water savings, oddly enough. So I'll show you to that really quickly. So right here, this is their grocery store that's taking place all on the Danfoss side. We can see what's happening there in real time. But if we wanted to look what was happening with their condenser, we can click on the condenser here, and we can see all the settings. They can see in real time, what's happening. They can see their fan speed, whether they're on or off, the temperature of the water versus the outside temp. And then they can we're graphing all that so they can pull back history since the beginning of the time of when it was installed. We found this particularly helpful with the Bitzer CMRC and the CoreSense stuff that we're seeing a lot more now. So if I pop over here to another Danfoss location, now they still have Danfoss there who's grabbing pressures, who's looking at the individual condensing units, but this individual customer wanted to be able to get that granular data that's coming from the Bitzer compressor. So I'll choose one that's an alarm just for fun. Actually, let me do one that's running, and I'll show you the other one that's an alarm. So right from here, I can see all the information, all that really granular stuff that's inside the CMRC, you're able to see here in real time. I know with a standard building controller, compressor runtime is really tough. But right from here with maintenance and for serviceability, we can see what the compressor runtimes are. We can see the capacity. It looks like at one time it was short cycling. And let's say if it was an alarm, we could hit the alarm reset right from here. If we had the right credentials, if we properly troubleshooted, without going up on the roof of this plant in Philadelphia, we could reset it. And that then the Bitzer can be off and running, and we can monitor it from here. And then to take that a step further, in the event that the CMRC is producing any kind of alarm, the customer is going to know about it, even though it might be something that's more preventative or more proactive. They're going to be able to know about that and take action during normal business hours as opposed to waiting for a catastrophic failure.
That's awesome. Is that Modbus into the Danfoss then, or is that on a separate daughter card going to you guys?
You hit it. So the idea is that even if Danfoss doesn't have a native integration, we can bring that in separate and apart from whatever EMS they have there.
Okay.
It's minor. I don't know that, at least when we put this in maybe a year ago, at the time, Danfoss didn't have an integration directly with the Bitzer compressor and like the 800, let's say. Now, some people like the idea of graphics and they like to see things moving. We have a couple different places that we can show that for people. If like we wanted to look at just the Danfoss, we could go here, see what's happening. But I think I showed you the layout before. I meant to show you the 3D layout as well. Some people are happy with the 2D looking like VIP back in the day, but what we're finding is more often now people have more familiarity with Metasys, with Johnson Controls. They want 3D layouts. So a lot of our stores now will just sit in front of this right here, leave it full screen. In the same way that they might have a security camera up all the time, they have this up sitting in the manager's office. So in some ways, and for some of our customers, it's like the modern day alarm logger, but they can carry it in their pocket. They can keep it at the store. There's no real limit to who's logging in or how many people have a login. If the customer wants them in, I want them in. And so it's fun that we can give that type of access to people. All right, Mr. Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, like I said before, I'm a contractor that uses GAMS. I use it heavily up in Vermont, and you can give a pretty good perspective to a lot of the guys that are probably listening to this podcast on a daily basis using GAMS. I started with Turner's at this point like 10 years ago, and it was just me, my partner Zach, and my stepfather, who at the time had been bringing the business down from what used to be 40, 50 guys doing installs, service, whatever else, and he was dwindling down, and then I ended up getting into it, and we've built it back up since then. And we evolved as a company as well, and hiring guys in the refrigeration industry, just in general. Hiring guys in any trade, right, has always been a challenge. And from the beginning, after working for Turner's for 5 years or so and taking on more responsibility, and we started expanding and whatever else, you go out and you look for guys, and a lot of the younger generations looking for that work-life balance. And if you do get them into refrigeration, I think that the biggest obstacle for a lot of these guys nowadays is EMS. I think EMS kind of messes even your master electrician up all the time. Well, I feel like a lot of master electricians have always been trained to pull 120 volts. And I don't mean to offend any like electricians or any sense, but they just pull two wires and they throw it in the plug and turn it on. Controls are a totally different animal. You've got relays that control another relay. And then you got the controller on the other end that's controlling all those relays. Training EMS is tough. As we went forward and got bigger and larger, and I saw those challenges, we were on a remodel up our way in New Hampshire, and this location in particular had a Danfoss controller, but the facilities director there, Chris, gave me access to their GAMS. And I was like, oh, what's this? And he's like, oh, this is our refrigeration controller. For all he knew, that's what it was. That his controller was GAMS. And I was like, no way. So later on, obviously found out, you go in the rack room, you do a site visit, you're doing the remodel, we're bidding out for the job and whatever else. And I saw this Danfoss controller, but I was cruising GAMS, and I could see that I could put things in defrost, I could change set points, I could pretty much do anything that the controller could do at the time. And I'm like, man, this thing's pretty sweet. And at the time, the rack was located on the roof. It was tough to get up on the roof in the sense that the alarm, the lock, whatever else. And during the day, getting the manager to lock the roof hatch. And then I'd leave the roof hatch open, and then I'd be like, you need to close that thing. I'm like, all right. So anyways, I was getting sick of it. So I started using GAMS even more and more. So it helped me immensely on the remodel. As we put new cases in, I was checking to see if sensors were working while staying right in front of the case rather than going upstairs. I was checking, we put like 4 or 5 different frozen food lineups in, throwing those things into defrost to check defrost power as we're commissioning the cases, making sure we're pulling the right amps and pulling contactors in. All the defrost contactors were still in the rack. So these weren't case controllers and whatever else. So everything still lived upstairs. and power panels and whatever else. So throwing back and forth saved me a bunch of time. So grew a liking to GAMS, and then I just happened to meet Steve a couple of months later at an energy development conference, FMI in Orlando, and me and him and Buck is a co-employee of Steve's, and we talked about everything we hated about EMS. And I'm not gonna, like, Dan Foss, Emerson, they're all great, but everybody has like something that you don't like about them, right? And me and Buck probably talked for 4 or 5 hours that night, just like about EMS just in general. So since then, we've been using GAMS in a lot of our stuff. It's helped me immensely with solving a lot of those issues that I mentioned before. So a little bit about Turner's, we're a supermarket refrigeration contractor primarily. So we have a lot of guys on call, and I talked to you about that, or I mentioned the work-life balance. To go through the supermarkets or access any of their temperatures, you got to go through the supermarket's VPN. Get into their, whether it's like Emerson or Copeland now, Connect Plus, and what we do is we check the stores every morning. And the reason we do that is because we want to see ice ups before they go into alarm. We want to see suction pressure. There might be, for me, I've been checking stores every day, 365 for at this point 8 years. I could tell you that store in Lebanon, New Hampshire, suction pressure is not supposed to be 60 psi on a day like today. And that would tell me that compressor's off on oil or whatever else. Over time, a lot of our technicians have noticed the same trends and habits and whatever else, but some of that stuff, that remote monitoring, was slow, and a lot of our guys didn't like getting into the VPN or whatever else, and GAMS kind of was a great solution for that. And now GAMS, you just pull it up on your phone, they basically overlay all these controllers. And besides the supermarkets, we've got a bunch of meat packing houses, we got produce facilities, we've got co-ops, we've got them all in this app too. So when guys are on call, they can go through the stores and check all the temperatures. They can see everything that you saw earlier from Steve. And what that does for the work-life stuff is they can go hit those calls at 10 in the morning or 9 in the morning after they check the stores, instead of waiting for their facilities guy that didn't notice it until the end of the day at 5 p.m. And then you get that 5 p.m. Friday call. So that stuff's kind of helped out, because when I'm interviewing an apprentice or a guy that wants to come work for Turner's, I try to let them know, hey, the old refrigeration fairy or folktales, dude, these guys work all night, 7 days a week. If you're on call, man, you've got 120 hours. And don't get me wrong, we do that at Turner's too. But any way that we can not do that, we're looking for that. And GAMS helps out a lot for that stuff. And there's a lot of different features that we use on there. One thing that's really helps out too is the store layout. As these remodels happen, we're going to CO2 in a lot of supermarkets, cases get moved, stuff like that. Managers have no idea where their cases are. And the GC didn't label them, or the refrigeration guy didn't label them before us. And they're like, where the hell is this? Layout helps us out a ton. We will give the managers access to it and stuff like that. So we use GAMS as a tool for a contractor. I think it's one of the best tools as a service manager that we have, for no doubt. It saves us a ton of time. We actually, in a lot of our supermarkets right now, bear the cost as a contractor rather than have the supermarket pay for it, because we got an ROI just in labor. Catching stuff, we'll call the store and be like, hey, this is trending north, man. More than likely, we've de-iced this before. The drain pan's iced up, fan blades caught in it, something like that. Take a look at it, and then I can send guys out 9 a.m., 10 a.m., and that's awesome. The supermarkets see that ROI too, and to the point where I think that they're one of our biggest customers that sees us using this was like, this is a no-brainer. I think we should get into this. That's where we come in GAMS, and yeah.
No, that sounds awesome. Having the ability to like look at that stuff before, and then especially like the smaller sided stuff, like being able to know a case is iced up. I'd much rather go and deal with a case that's iced up at 8 a.m. than 9 p.m. when it's been sitting there the entire time.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting that service call on Friday, even 3:30 is just late enough. And then you get on you go onto it remotely, and that it's been trending north since 8:30 this morning. And then some of these supermarkets, they have time delays in there, like hour and a half, 2 hours. It's like, I could have, and then 3:30 in the afternoon, you're firing up the truck. And then if you're in a place like we are in Vermont, where everything's 2 hours away because there's no highways, you don't get there until that evening, and then you get home at 1 a.m. all because of an ice up that could have been taken care of that morning at 9. And I'm sure that's something too, Kev, being in the industry this long.
Yeah, that's absolutely miserable having to drive that much. I mean, we don't have it that bad, but yeah, I would much rather deal with that at o'clock in the morning than deal with it when it's happening right now.
Yeah. How are you, like, in where you're located? What's the hiring like in the refrigeration? Are you guys union?
Yeah,
out
we're a
in the
union
Midwest?
shop, so it's probably 50-50 coming in from the apprenticeship, and then 50-50 coming in through like the back door, like the card programs. And that way, we're getting a bunch of young kids, and it's the same thing. They don't want to be the on call, and they're him-hawing about that. And I get it. Like it sucks, but it's part of the trade. But with this, you could definitely manage it a lot better.
Yeah, you're definitely not going to mitigate it with this. But
No, stuff's still going
to
to break.
mitigating a rack. Yeah, you're not mitigating a rack down call, tripping a breaker and stuff like that. But
yeah, stuff's still going to break at the end of the day. But have you guys gotten into any predictive maintenance, Steve? Any predictive failure stuff yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing that like we've been really focusing on is looking at case temperature trending and trying to identify cases that aren't defrosting well enough. So if we can look at cases that aren't maintaining temperature and how long they're staying outside of like their suggested range, we can probably mitigate a lot of high temperature service calls. So it might not be an alarm just yet today, but if we can watch it, if it's just not maintaining temp, or if it doesn't ever hit its temp 50% of the time, we can do that. We can have contractors fix those on a scheduled basis during normal hours, as opposed to waiting for a 90-degree day. And now we got a bunch of cases in alarm. Those cases have been running warm for a while, might not be firing off alarms, but we can try to catch the ones that maybe aren't defrosting well or that are trending in the wrong direction.
No, that's a huge thing, being able to see that and go through it and actually pick that up before it's become an issue. That predictive maintenance and look at the trends is huge. Now, how do you guys do your alarm monitoring?
Yeah, so like I said before, it was like if we could reimagine alarm monitoring, what would it look like? And part of that for us and a lot of the customers that we had talked to was like, it was so hard to make a change. Let's say someone wanted to go on vacation, or if they wanted to change for on call. We wanted to make a way where they could just hop on the website, to say, okay, what types of alarms do I want to be alerted about? Just check a box. And then what's the escalation path? Hey, I want the first call to go to these 3 people. Maybe they want a text message too. Maybe they just want to email, any combination. And then if they don't acknowledge the alarm, or if they don't hop in and silence it, after 15, 20, whatever duration you decide, it's going to go ahead to a second group of people. And so we have 3 tiers where it's able to escalate the issue, and we can do emails, text, and phone call. The phone call is automated, but here's what's really cool about it. It tells you everything you need to know. It's, hey, this is an alarm message for this store. You have a high temperature alarm on this case. Its current temperature is 60 degrees and alarm if above 55 degrees. And then it tells you what time it happened. It's just really enough. You get the phone call from the same number every time, and you groan, ugh, and you just pull out the app on your phone, and then you just triage it without leaving your sofa. So it's super detailed. It's not just auto dialer like back in the day when it just said, hey, refrigeration alarm, and you're wondering like how bad it is. It can tell you exactly what the issue is, and you'll be able to see that from an app on your phone, from a text, or the email.
Yeah, I think on our end, we have a lot of customers that have outsourced their refrigeration like alarms to, especially overnight, to somewhere overseas where there might be like a language barrier issue.
Yeah, that is the worst.
Yeah. And then and they don't know sometimes like the texts that come through on those from those EMS like alarms also don't make sense, because they'll be like have an acronym to them. Circuits, you can only have so many characters unless you have an E3 or site supervisor in the Copeland. They have no idea what FF means, right? Not, instead of frozen food. So and then you end up on the call, and then you end up answering this phone call at 1 a.m. with somebody that is trying to convey a message, and you're like, just send me an email like of what the text alarm is at this point. I think that GAMS kind of cleans that up a little bit, which is nice. And especially if like you're getting that call from GAMS, that technician probably has GAMS on his phone as well. And like Steve said, you just pull right up at it right then. But yeah, you're right, Kev. That's the worst. You're like, what? And they're like, door. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's nuts. Like some of those, like you can't understand a word they're saying, or there's a huge disconnect between the manager and them. And by the time you get there, like nobody knows what you're supposed to work on, and if it's not an alarm, yeah, that's a huge problem. But yeah, if GAMS is doing it directly, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
Do you guys have the ability? So like if they don't have smaller mom and pop stuff, can you guys do like text alerts?
Absolutely. So they get a text right to their phone. Obviously, if they want any way that they want to be alerted, they can know about it. So phone call, email, text message. I even have someone first, it shoots them a text message, then it's shooting them an email, and then they have it calling their home phone number. So like they still have a landline, and they know when that phone rings at 2:00 in the morning, it's probably GAMS calling them, and they can deal with it that way. So what's cool is you could do all three of them phone calls. It's really all about what your workflow is. But what's nice is when you get the email, you just click the link directly in the email, it takes you right to the page where you can actually triage it. So as long as you have a login, you're right in.
Yeah, that's awesome. Being able to see that and go through that. Now, we were talking earlier about like the defrost integration. Do you want to go through and show on a live store what that looks like? So that way we could see stuff thrown in, because you guys could throw things in defrost right from GAMS.
Exactly, right from GAMS without having to hop in to a controller. You can do it without even leaving the web interface. Yeah, I can show you how that might work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super awesome that you guys had the ability to write and read to it.
So let's see. All right, here she comes. Alrighty, so let's check out this produce case. So clearly she's iced up. Looks like she doesn't have any defrost, probably why she's iced up. So before we roll our truck, let's throw in a manual defrost right from here. And I'll put a note, no defrost programmed. Case iced up, right?
Today's episode is sponsored by the RefRuShield RDP Series differential pressure monitors from Westermeyer Industries, now available for transcritical CO2 systems in addition to other common pressures and refrigerants. When the filter element of your coalescing oil separator is contaminated, it can hurt your system's performance and efficiency. But how do you know when it's time to replace that filter? Wait too long to replace, and you could end up with a nasty filter blowout. But replacing too often can be a waste of time and money. The answer is installing a differential pressure monitor. The RDP Series differential pressure monitors, including the new transcritical CO2 model, are available now from Westermeyer Industries. To find out more information, email sales@westermeyerin.com. That's WESTERMEYERIN.com.
Bang. So now she's in defrost. And what it'll do is it'll run for whatever its standard defrost duration is. This one's going to suck because it's not. but this, like I said, this is my demo site. So let me pull one up that's not an alarm so you can see what that might look like. So we can throw this one in defrost. I can see it's hot gas. I can see that it has a minimum defrost, and its standard defrost is 20 minutes. So I put it in that manual defrost. It'll go through, and now that case is in defrost. I can see right from here that status changed to manual defrost. I can see who did it. It looks like I did it once before, the beginning of last year on this demo site. But this is a great place to put notes in, right? Case continuously ices up. It's a way for us to justify capital improvements later. Like when it's saying, hey, it's time to replace this case. Man, we can't just keep manually defrosting this thing all the time. It has 10 defrosts a day, and we need to do something about it. So it becomes really clean. Let me show you what the notes look like. So we come up here to logbook. Let's say I want to say, okay, I know I've been de-icing this case. Let me just type in the word iced. Anytime I've ever typed in the word, or anyone in the organization type up the word ice, it's going to show up here. Same with like fan. Any words that people are putting in for their notes are going to show up that quickly. One last thing that probably makes sense to show is our ability to go between stores. So if we're on a dashboard here, this is going to aggregate all of our stores into a single pane of glass, whatever stores you have access to or you've been given permission to view. But right now, I'm going to look at Catonsville. That's where we were before. This is my demo. And then let's go to West Columbia. And just that quickly, we're looking at a live store, just being able to bounce without having to disconnect, wait for all the controllers to load, change VPNs. We can bounce between all of them and we can see what's going on.
Oh, that's super fast. I mean, like instant.
Yeah, it's right away.
And we're checking what the rack's doing. You could even manual compressors on and off if you had to. If you were having a bad day, you could do that. And if you had the right permissions to do that, you could do that pretty cleanly.
Steve, I also think it's important to note that you can get into terminal mode through these too. You can have controller access.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me go over to my office demo. So this is an E3 that we have over there. And I come up here, click controller access, click on whichever controller I need to interrogate. And that quickly, I'm into the controller as if I'm standing in front of it. No special.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's
So
my favorite part.
Let's say we
especially
had to
the E3.
change something with the rack. We had to add defrost to that one case. Remember that one that wasn't programmed? Okay, let's go in here and let's make sure that happens. And we're right into it. Same with 800A for Danfoss. That's all there, really clean, super straightforward for all of our stores. And again,
Now,
everybody has to have access to the keys of the kingdom. If we don't need our guy who hasn't been to training, who's super green, hired him last week, we don't need him into our customers' controllers, right? So we can lock down who has access to what. But for our A guys who need to have it, we want them in there. And you can, it's as simple as just clicking a checkbox when you create the user.
so with the 800A, just for example, is it dialing in via the web browser or is it like the store desktop layout?
So it goes right through StoreView Web. So I just click on the controller itself. I can choose rack B, rack A, and I'm right in there.
Nice. Oh, that is super, super helpful.
So, whether it's Emerson or Danfoss, you can get right in. And the idea is, again, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh, the last thing I want to do is pull out my laptop, you can get to these controllers from your phone. And so I can't tell you how many times I've been called and I don't have to even worry about, oh man, I left my computer at home last night or at the office last night. I just pull out the tablet and I'm in.
Nice. And you said it's iOS and Android?
That's correct. Yep. And even for the Windows PC, let's say at a manager's office, we give them a little icon. I'll pull one over here. So we install it as a program on their computer. So you pull up Chrome, download it as a program, you click on it, and the customer doesn't have to remember what website to go to or what to do. All they know is they click the big G and they're in there.
See, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the best part is like how quick that happens. And with Emerson, if you have an E2, but you have one E3, obviously you can see, then you'll be able to see all the controllers. You can get in their terminal mode as well, just through the E3, because the E3 has that it pulls all the controllers into one.
Now, do you have an E3 on site or a site supervisor to see the E2s that have that functionality?
Yeah, so the E2, believe it or not, it came out in 2001. And the technology was a little bit different back then. And as a result, if you want to be able to dive into the nitty gritty of E2, it does require a site supervisor or E3 on site. But the site supervisor is relatively inexpensive and it's a small form factor, so it's a pretty good solution.
No, that makes sense. Actual GAMS itself. Now, is it a mini computer on site, like a data logger, or is it all just cloud-based?
It's all cloud-based. So the idea is that we wanted something super resilient, like with it being having critical products and with it being super, obviously we haven't like real-time information. We wanted it to go right to the cloud. We didn't want to have to worry about something on site, losing power, fans going bad, hard drives failing. So we're able to have all this redundancy and resiliency by having it in a SAS 70 Type 2 data center. So It's all backed up and all that fun stuff.
Now, just shooting some questions here. Now, you say if you had a customer where they're like IT wants everything locked down, like they don't want the controllers on the network, and that. Now, do you guys have the ability to use the cell router to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like we use cell routers a lot on like new construction, right? Permanent power is not in place yet. Maybe the IT hasn't finished setting up the network. We're using cell cards there. But to your point, if you have a major retailer and they don't want it on their network, we can certainly put it on a high-speed internet connection.
Okay. Yeah, because that's a big thing. Aldi's starting to come into stuff like this, and they don't want any of the controllers in the network. They're gun shy about it. They don't have any that. So it's cell routers. This would be like perfect for a customer like Aldi or Trader Joe's or something like that. Along that means.
So a lot of people, I've even seen them pull in a separate Comcast connection. So they have their store running on the network with all the fun IT security and firewalls and all that great stuff. But when what they do is bring a whole separate connection, they pay the $50 a month to Comcast, and they have something that's completely separate and apart just for their vendors.
I don't understand why more customers don't do that. That's 100% separate from their network, and then they
doesn't touch it. No VLANing, nothing overly complicated, just a separate line coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a drop in the bucket compared to all the VPNs and managing all that.
But not only that, cell cards are like, they work. It depends on where you are. If you're in the middle of Vermont, like Sam is, your service might be sketchy. It sounds terrible to say that in 2024, but the reality is cell service isn't perfect everywhere.
Especially in some buildings too, where it's an issue where they have metal roofs, and that becomes a problem.
I'm sure I'm not the only one that's seen a motor room in a basement, right?
Yeah. We have tons of them out in Chicago.
So
all over the place.
I've
been in some facilities that have data blockers because they don't want their employees on cellular devices while they're picking produce or something.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, and then in the machine room's right in the middle of the place, and I have to go outside to get service calls and stuff. I like intermittently while I'm working in the facility.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've yet to see that, but I'm sure it's coming. Yeah. I've been in facilities where I got to lock my cell phone in a box before I walk in there. Like, we're not allowed to bring anything in. It's been a real treat here lately because like a lot of probes and stuff, everything's on your phone now. So it's shit. I can't really work without this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, like the testo probes and stuff like that.
Yeah, so those facilities become a problem. We've kept an iPad there for guys that go there all the time because it doesn't leave there, so they don't care. The pictures are never going anywhere. But yeah, it's crazy how some places are. But no, this looks awesome. The alarm monitoring and the graphing function of it looks amazing, and the ability for you guys to be able to build out whatever you need.
Exactly. Yeah, no, what's fun is if there's a customer requirement, man, I love it. But if I just had X, the Denton power metering, dude, what's great is we can go do it. It's our system. We built it from scratch. So if there's a real need for it, we can go do it. That's really fun to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I'm super interested because I've been watching a lot of this lately, like a lot of power monitoring stuff and having that dashboard. A lot of customers are like loving that like the power monitoring dashboard. And this just seems like it would just kill it because it can integrate all of it.
All in one place, exactly.
Yeah, we just did a flexible load management flexible load management in the sense that like our energy aggregators sending out signals, right, to, hey, there's like a high peak event that's going to happen. And then so they like charge is what they call it. So in a freezer, you just, instead of having the set point at like 0, you plummet it to as low as you can go, like -10, -15, and then allowing the freezer to coast through that peak event. So the compressor, so then the condenser unit shuts off on the roof, and then so it's not running during their peak events, which is like anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. And so the idea is that during the charge, if like in big freezers and whatever else, that you're essentially freezing the product, and the product is then a battery because it's been brought down to like -15, that as long as they keep the doors closed or know that the peak event's happening, that they can shut the unit off on the roof. Now there's obviously a temperature that it can't get to where they're going to bring it back on, and they don't get a penalty, but as long as they're in the program. But we just did this project, and I was able to, instead of the guys that I was working with on the project, instead of having that give them VPN access and stuff like that, into the controller. I was just like, oh, I talked with Steve. We'll give you a login. We'll give you access to this site or whatever else in the meantime. And you can access the data and everything else that's going on. You can download the data. To create the program. And then we created the program, and now we're going to launch it here in a couple of weeks and get it going now. So
that's super interesting. It's kind of like how Axiom Cloud is doing some stuff.
Axiom Cloud. Yeah. That's fun. Me and Steve talk about Axiom all the time.
So now, are you getting the signal from the utility company as like a digital input, or are you getting it through IoT over the internet?
So in Vermont, they have an energy aggregator that works for the utility that's located in Vermont, and that aggregator is the utility. So they know when like the events are happening. So essentially, that signal is going to come from the utility based on whatever data that they have, where they see. Usually, it's like a temperature event or a storm event or stuff like that, and they give a certain amount of time, usually 24 hours. Hey, this event's going to happen, and so it's like a 0 to 10 volt DC signal into our controller. And then depending on what voltage that signal comes through as, it'll tell it to charge. And usually the charge starts with this, like the freezers, clears the coil. And then the next like 2, 3, 4 hours, depending on what data we have for that location, it'll charge the freezer, bring it down. This one location in particular is going to bring the freezers down to like -15 to -18 is where, because we do a lot of tests beforehand, like a month's worth of testing. Basically, how hard can we run the system without affecting it and bringing it down, all while being on site and very close monitoring. And then we can see, and then we will replicate the event. And that event is like the coast. And we'll see how long it takes to get back to that set point that they can't have it above. And then they create the program around that. And this is our first one. We'll see, how it goes. And I think they have some pilots that they're going to do in the supermarkets for the same idea. But we work with our utility really closely in Vermont for a bunch of other different things as well. And another great thing with GAMS actually recently was like a heat reclaim project that we did up north, where we recommissioned a glycol pump that was on a rack that had sat there and never been commissioned from the opening of the store. And a utility found out about it, and they're like, "Oh, well, you have a heat reclaim there?" I'm like, "Yeah, but that store's never commissioned it. We don't even know if it works. It looks like they cut the wires." So I actually gave that. It was a gas company, and they gave them access to the GAMS data. We recommissioned the glycol pump, charged it. I actually put a new glycol pump on there, and then I built a program in the E3 that controls that facility to first stage of heat just off the glycol, et cetera. And then we outside ambient temperature sensors, glycol switches, flow switches, glycol in, glycol out, or whatever. Anyways, that utility was able to calculate the amount of heat that we're able to get off that rack, because they need exact measurements. They can't just take like, all right, what's the THR and the legends is just usually based off like a full load situation,
which we never
they're not right. So and under government regulation, which we never have, under government regulations that these guys are under to give this funding, they need to know how much heat's actually getting used. So we put all those sensors and everything else onto the heat reclaim side of that system. I gave them access into the GAMS, and they download the data. And like you said earlier, it's 2 years with the data. So these guys do it a month at a time. And then they're able to calculate how much heat they're actually taking out of that rack system. And then they've created a custom incentive program for that store in particular. And they paid for the entire project. And now that customer, that supermarket that we did it for, ends up with a free heat reclaim system because their natural gas use has come down this however much. So it worked out. And instead of, in this instance, it was in a Copeland controller E3. I would have had to give them VPN access. I would have had to bring in the supermarket to create a profile for VPN, and then they can get into their Connect Plus. And then they would have had to do it every 3 days because that E3 in particular has so many circuits and whatever else on it. It can only handle a certain amount of data. This way, the guy does automatically once a month, downloads the data, and boom.
See this is where this would be real nice. Is it's aggregating all that data, because we have some controllers where we get a day or two of logging because they are just so bogged down, especially these CO2 controllers where we're doing a ton of, this is where it would just absolutely kill it. GAMS would just kill it with a CO2 store.
Yeah, totally agree.
Sam, you should blow his mind with some history chart.
Oh yeah, some history charts. Yeah, history charts are great, like in the sense that actually I just used it recently.
Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm trying. There we go. I don't know what's on my screen yet. I don't know.
Steve, have you guys got any CO2 stores yet?
Oh, heck yeah. We have a bunch on here. And what's
Nice.
cool is you get all that data from your case controller, but you're seeing it right from your phone. So like you're seeing what your valve percent open percentage is. You're seeing what the superheat is in real time, but also historically, what's it been doing? Here's what it is now, but what's it been doing today, yesterday, last week? And you're gonna be able to see that all overlaid in a single chart.
So can you build trends? So if I'm looking at a CO2 store that like I want to be able to see valve average percent open over say like a 24-hour period and look at my like case temp so I can know if I need to tune valves. If
Yeah, can you see my thing right now?
No, you hit percent at the bottom of the screen, hit percent.
Yeah.
then-
I'm sorry, I didn't click what I wanted to share. There you go. Can you see it now? Or
Yep.
all right, cool. Exactly what you said. So here's a supermarket we have, and you said that you wanted to see valve percentage. So let's circuit here. This circuit right here is.
You could do a search if you wanted to.
So this is like the temperature on circuit 19.1. We'll just say over, actually, let's just go over a couple days because obviously a whole week, right? So this is a low temp circuit. And then if I want to overlay the valve percentage, so it's a pulse valve. So now I can overlay the EPR opening percentage versus the temperature. I can pretty much take any output that's in, this is a Dixel. So this is an XM679K controller. I can see the set point, overlay the set. So obviously it stays right at set point pretty well. I can see the superheat set point, and I can overlay all this together. There's the actual superheat all under one graph. And actually in this store in particular, instead of accessing the history chart for all of this, we have it right underneath the circuit. So if I go into A19.1 right here, all of it's already selected. So I can take these out here, alarm high, alarm low, whatever else. But I've got the superheat target. I can see where the superheat's trending. I can see what the temperature is on the blue line. And then the set point obviously is the green line, which is hidden because it holds set point pretty well. But I can overlay any of those outputs or inputs that come out of that 679K controller right on the history chart. So CO2 tuning, this is perfect for in that sense. This store in particular right here, yesterday, we've had some really warm weather this winter to the point where some of our racks have been going in and out of split more often than they normally do. And we were noticing on some certain days that this store was like pinging an alarm on the warmest day. Now in my mind, I knew, it must be low on refrigerant, but I wasn't really involved. We have another technician that just took over the store and is not as familiar with the store. So she was able to get in here and then overlay the circuit with the ambient temperature outside and see it going in and out. And I'm trying to find which circuit it was. It was a deli case yesterday. I thought it was BS.
You can type in the word deli if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's this one right here. And I'll go the last 7 days. So you can see these. This is like the warmest part of the day. And if I highlight this area, we'll zoom in on it. And the hottest part of the day, obviously, is between noon and 4 o'clock. As soon as this system came out of split, it was low in refrigerant. So we had recently repaired a leak 2 months ago that we had found in a produce cooler. And we added refrigerant to it. But when the system's in split, you never really know if you've added enough refrigerant, right? When you're killing half the condenser up here. You also don't want to add 500 pounds, just add 500 pounds. But we run that line where, all right, add enough now, and then we're going to keep a good eye on it. We want to keep usually a ball on our receivers at all times. But anyways, this thing was really showing when it came out of split. So you can overlay this with your ambient temperature, and then you'll see that it goes up, and then So anyways, it's just really, there's a lot of really good troubleshooting opportunities with this history chart, like you're saying.
So as you're doing this, can you make live changes to the XM still from here without going into the E3? Can you make a valve percentage change?
Not today. I can see that coming in the future for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it's an E3, you can. If it's an E2, you can't, right? Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So like in Essex, I know that we have an E3 on the HVAC. I can go in here. I can change set points, winter, heat, summer, cool, stuff like that. This store here is where in Rutland. This is all E3 on the low temp side. Put in defrost, change set points. depending on what this is a board and point store, so stuff's kind of, your graphs aren't quite as tight, solenoid TXV and stuff like that. But you put in defrost, update alarms, stuff like that. The history charts are great. Actually, let's see here. I know
In some of our stores, they have it set up for case cleaning. Like they set that up in their E3. So they can actually initiate a case cleaning right from inside of GAMS. So they like that because they're not having to call a contractor just to clean a case out. They can do that before the contractor arrives on site, and that way he can get to work when he gets there.
Yep.
No, that's nice. Graphing on here looks so much better.
How fast am I running around here?
Yeah, it's insane how fast it is.
How many stores have we been in just the last 30 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm mind blown about how fast the graphing is, to be honest to you.
Yeah, and it pulls up. If I wanted to go last 30 days, look how quickly it's going to pull that data, right? That's 30 days worth of data. Just pull that right there.
Grab some outputs, man. Just grab some random ones.
Yeah.
So that way you can overlay the sensors with some outputs.
Yeah, obviously refrigeration outputs can go up and down all the time, but down here, that's the bar. We'll zoom in on this area. Yeah, in and out. And then that's the other thing. I like doing this slide out sync because if I see something, all right, so let's look at set last 7 days and I see something weird right here and I want to just select that area. I just go right here, I zoom in. It's kind of like an E3 functionality, but as the temperature, like this place in particular, the walk-in freezer always warms up when the ambient temperature rises. And this probably has a door open or something like that. But like I said, if I see something weird and I want to take a look at it, I'll just zoom in on it, something like that. And it happens really quick. You can also overlay it or
whatever.
Yeah, and grab a defrost. You can see it. You can even see if the AC's on in the store, right? Oh, obviously the AC's not going to come on right here, but overlay compressors, multiple compressors, literally any temperature any output that is in the controller, you can compare between the two.
That's awesome. What's the max amount of graphs you could have on one screen?
I don't know if there is one.
I've done 20. I've done 20 before.
Really? At that point, it almost becomes unreadable. But
yeah, it gets pretty close. This is the heat reclaim project that we did at this store in particular. We were trying to pull as much data as possible when we were checking everything out, and they were like I said, we got up to 20. I'm like, I can't. This doesn't make any sense, man.
But at that point, people were just looking at it. Oh yeah, it looks great. It's just a bunch of squiggly lines on the screen because there's so much data.
Yeah. But I think what we did with that was we had selected 20 different things. Then we had generated the Excel document, which put it into tables and columns. And then they were able to do a lot of their aggregating on energy use and heat reclaim use and BTUs. And then basically they created an equation basically from all the points that we had pulled out of the controller. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So here's the heat reclaim supply temp, right? So we're overlaying it we overlaid this with something in the HVAC. We were looking at, I think it was stage 1 of heat and RTU2. So stage 1 of heat and RTU2 it's RTU1 is what I want to select. So this stage 1 of heat is the heat reclaim. So we heat the store primarily with heat reclaim. You can see stage 2 never runs now. We're supplying a 93-degree temp into the store at all times. This is just today, but in the last 7 days, that second stage of heat still hasn't even come on yet, and that's our auxiliary natural gas. So we're just using this heat right off the rack B to continue heating the produce half of the store. And then I think there's an input in here. There obviously is an input in here where you can see and that's the store temp. So
those graphs look awesome. The overlays do.
Yeah, and they're high definition. High resolution. And so the store is maintaining pretty much 68 to 69 for the last 7 days without issue, just taking the glycol heat reclaim and not using heat too, or the auxiliary heat. And they'll also take the supply temps, the return glycol and whatever else, and they'll generate how much BTUs they're using off the rack rather than using natural gas. So there's a lot of different opportunities in this history chart thing.
So
is there anything else you want to go over?
But that for me, when I look at these graphs, this is a way that as a contractor we can show real value to our stores, and we can justify our being there. Hey, look, we've done this work, and here's what you're getting for it. So it's a way that we can be meaningful just with the controls that they already have there.
No, it's awesome. You're basically taking the controls they already have there and bringing them into the next century.
Yeah,
exactly.
I find myself like just taking CPC sensors and attaching them to random spots. If I'm trying to chase a flood back issue, I'll try to attach a CPC sensor to something that I think it might be coming from, and then I'll watch that history chart, try to compare it, whatever else. And I can.
Steve, can you guys build like custom screens? So we'll say like for CO2 rack, that's one thing. With the E3s fixed that, but the E2, a lot of E2 stores, they don't have like a layout screen for the rack. And I know that is a huge like benefit of microthermal, like that helps guys. They can trace out the flow of the rack. If somebody gave you like a one-line drawing, could you guys build the screen out for that?
Absolutely. And we can make it in 3D too. So if they have a drawing, if they have a piping schedule, if they have a rack dimensional drawing, we could get that all in there as well.
See, that's killer right there, because you're just adding that in there. And I think that helps like new guys, the greener guys, especially apprentices, be able to diagnose that and be able to see that. What about trended refrigerant alarm levels? Do you guys do any trended refrigerant levels where you guys are looking at the receiver and looking at it like over a month, 2 months, 3 months, and like identifying a leak? Are you guys have the ability to do that? Like a small leak?
Man. So any of that like receiver level trending is really straightforward, both with Emerson and Danfoss, honestly. But you can do that over the course of obviously the last week, the last month, and try to pinpoint leaks that way as well. A lot of our clients, that's probably one of the first things they ask. We give them a login, they're like, okay, where do I see my liquid level? So that's certainly something that we see as important.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit, identifying leaks and the cost of refrigerant. That's a huge savings.
Absolutely.
You got anything else you want to go over?
I'm good. I think we hit the high level stuff.
Do you want to go over the buy EMS thing real quick? Because I know that's you sent me some sensors and I used them and they worked out real good. So
no doubt. No, I appreciate that. No, so we have the Buy EMS, which is our online web store where you can buy temperature sensors. So we, as a controls contractor, we blow through some temperature sensors and pressure transducers. So we decided to hire the guy that makes them for the large OEMs, but offer them at half the price. So whatever you probably pay at any supply house, our temperature probes for both Danfoss and Emerson, RDM, are going to be half of what you're typically paying. So super high quality, made here in the United States by the same guys who makes them for the OEMs, but saving you and your customers a few dollars in the process.
Yeah, I used some of them. You send me some samples. They worked fine, and right next to the OEM ones. They were like spot on.
And the reality is they look the same, right? That green probe looked just like any other green probe you might see out there. So they're super rock solid, don't have any issues with them, and they're saving everybody $1 in the process. Check out buyems.net and a bunch of other control parts on there, low voltage cable, Danfoss gear, Emerson gear if you need it. So happy to help you out over there.
All right, guys. Thanks.